Okay, we have Iya here today, guys. In this episode of Heart Snacks, Candy for Your Soul podcast, I sit down with Dr. Iya Whiteley, space and aviation psychologist with a PhD in cognitive engineering, researcher, and best-selling author whose work bridges human performance, consciousness, and the inner tools we carry within. Together, we will explore breath as a gateway to pre-verbal intelligence and how to communicate it to others, emotional healing, and intuitive knowing, drawing from Iya's experiences integrating astronauts after encounters in space expanded their consciousness forever, as well as her very interesting teachings on Aurora Parenting. This will be a conversation that reminds us the greatest frontier is not outer space, but the inner cosmos within each of us. And the most important part, that expressing yourself is why you are here on this planet. That is what will help evolve our world. And Iya wants to help you do this without fear or confusion. Welcome, Iya.
Oh, wow. How gorgeous. Thank you for such a glowing introduction. And
Yes.
I like the preview of the topics that we're going to get in. That's gorgeous. I look forward
Yes.
to a flow.
Yes, me too. Okay, well, the way I start off is just with a kind of icebreaker to get us in our hearts, because I feel like, and you know this, when we're in our heart energy and our child energy, we kind of just play. So the way I'd like to start is, what are you most nostalgic for from your childhood, whether it be a feeling, a flavor, a show, a toy?
Loved being in the pine forest. I was born in Riga, Latvia, and we have Riga Gulf, which is part of the Baltic Sea. And that has amazing white sand beaches with dunes and pine forest, which is very clear. And you can find amber on the beach. And do you know this film, or have you watched a film called Contact with Jodie Foster, written by Carl Sagan?
I just rewatched it the other night.
Did you? Oh, fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of my favorites. And it was written by Carl Sagan on his book, based on his book, Pale Blue Dot, which he's made this extraordinary journey of, I guess it was his personal journey. I would imagine that he was talking about himself, but put a female character as Dr. Airway to show this struggle about connecting science and spirituality, or science and consciousness, that we cannot make a leap yet as easily in science. And especially when he was at the forefront of research and applied work. The name of the book, The Pale Blue Dot, is because he turned around one of the Voyager as it was leaving the solar system. And I guess the programmers did the programming, but he initiated the idea to turn it around and take a photograph of how the Earth looks from the edge of the solar system. And that photograph, you can find a clip, I think it's only a few minutes, of what it looks like, and him actually speaking on that we are a speck of dust in the universe, even in our solar system. And which is, to me, that sand as well. And there's two scenes in movie Contact when Dr. Airway, or Jodie Foster, first time she travels on the spacecraft that they design, supposedly just falling through the hole on Earth, but having a journey of 18 hours or over 18 hours. And she picks up a sand on this, what looks like some extrasensory perceptual beach, perhaps. And we could think about it in a different way. And she picks it up, and on her palm the constellation comes forth on her hand. And so for me, playing on the beach and then watching that film years later watching the sparks, it resonates a lot. And then she comes back and she can't explain it. She can't put it into words. And beautifully so, the priest is woven into the story, who asks her at some point, because it's her struggle to kind of believe and to beyond, and also still inquiring about the extent of our universe and who belongs there and who lives there, whom we can reach. And then he asks her, he asks, she asked, so Dr. Arway asks the friend who is trained priest, but I don't think he practices in the film. And he is saying, so she's asking him, so how can you prove that God exists? And this is kind of a prior. They have to make they're already, I think it's a party before the White House, some sort of announcement. And they step up in the balcony and they're under the stars. And he then asks her, so a question rather than an answer, and says, "Did you love your father?" And in the film, she has a very close relationship with her father. And of course, without hesitance, she says yes. And he says, "Prove it." and that's the long woven connection to the Pine Beach in Latvia. Because throughout that film, it plays with this, where is the reality? Where is our consciousness? Where our beliefs fit in, and how we make that journey. And through experience is the only way that we make a connection of what is meaningful to us, and how do we form meaning really through our experiences, because it doesn't come from knowledge.
So, everything you just said, I'm in love with. So, Contact is like my top 3 favorite movies, along with Arrival and Interstellar. And the beach kind of reminds me actually of a liminal space. It's like a space where almost like the quantum foam of this other netherworld, this deep ocean, kind of rubs up against our 3-dimensional Earth. So it kind of makes me think of like when she was on that beach in this liminal space, did she see her father, or did she see an interdimensional being coming to her as her father because she's comfortable with that, right?
Yes.
So it's
Yes, it is
super.
very, very surreal, and you could feel that that was perhaps the intention, for us to trying to clarify what is
Yeah.
how she's trying to contemplate that. But the connection is so real, or it feels so real in the film. And yeah, it's interesting how they portrayed that potential communication of how it might be and what it might feel like. I thought that they've done an amazing work. I wonder how far did Carl Sagan, it comes from his inner space, of inner experience,
Yeah.
or was it such beautifully written material? And I have a backstory too, where the pale blue dot originated.
Yes.
So I, I have,
Tell me.
yeah. So we were asked, or we won, I guess, we bid and won a contract for the European Space Agency to design tools for psychological support for long duration missions to the Moon and Mars. And we used an innovative method with Dr. Olga Bogotyryova. And she is a biologist and also academician from Academ City in Siberia. It's the top, I guess, academicians from Russian Academy of Science. But I happened to meet her in the UK at the university that I was studying. So we've actually met here. So we were organizing a workshop to invite experts who might have an understanding, or like tap into the experiences of various kinds where people work away from family. So we had a psychologist who I trained with, clinical psychologist working in Dubai, Dr. Raymond Hamden, and he came as an expert to support people and understand their challenges in working away from home. And majority of the people in Dubai that are expatriates come either to earn for a period of time and then potentially, invest into something back home, or people also come to work and then send money home for whatever reason. And so they don't have a network. People have no support, and it has its ways affecting us in a sometimes very challenging, and some people prosper. So it just depends. So it was Dr. Hamden. We had a submariner, so commander of the submarine ship. We had Antarctic mission commander from the British Antarctic Survey. We had an astronaut. We had firefighters. So all of them likely to work with extreme environments or in closed space, being away for a long time. And also, we were lucky to invite Martin Seligman, who is the father of positive psychology. And funnily enough,
Well,
in classical psychology books, he's actually known for learned helplessness. So not known for positive psychology, but look at this reverse or trick, the
wow.
duality, I guess, is that he understood if we can learn helplessness, which was his experiment very early on in his career, then we can learn happiness. And so that's what he got on. And psychology was introduced into this new field where you don't go to psychologists just to solve problems, but how to improve your life. And that was extraordinary. So a friend of mine did a PhD, Ilona Boniwell. She did it in London, although we have roots back to school in Latvia. She went on to be I guess one of the initial positive psychology movement, and she implemented it into organization, into schools. And so she knew Martin Seligman because of her PhD in the topic. So she invited him to this event in Noordwijk in Holland at the European Space Agency Center. And I'm working in the corridor with Martin Seligman. For me, of course, he's a legend in the profession. And suddenly, I don't know what spurred it on, but he said, do you know movie Contact? And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, okay, it relates to space, and our psychological support, but not really. I mean, it's a short journey, nothing to do with. And I said, it's my favorite film. A lot of it is kind of, is a beautiful journey that I travel as I grow. I watch it, frequently. And he's, because, the frontier in science, you do face these conundrums as a researcher where you ask questions that are not ready for the funding bodies to fund, and you wait, or you find an alternative way to approach. And so just like she has that journey, some points are very similar in internal experience, I guess, that she is portrayed through her character. And he says, well, do you know that actually Carl Sagan written this after I gave him a science fiction novel? And I said, how come? He says he never read science fiction. He was against it. And then he got diagnosed with cancer. And Martin, being his very close friend, brought him the book. And unfortunately, I don't remember which science fiction book he gave him.
Darn it. Okay.
But he said because of that book, he wrote The Pale Blue Dot. So how amazing how, like that circle completed. And I found who inspired a person, to write such a extraordinary, and that's the only science fiction he wrote.
That is so cool. I need to know what that book is. Is it online? Could I see what
The
sci-fi
Pale Blue
book
Dot?
did? Oh,
Pale
no,
Blue
the one
Dot.
that inspired him.
I don't know because perhaps I could reach out to Martin Seligman, or
Okay.
maybe you get him to the show.
Yeah.
I
So I
haven't
was gonna
spoken
say
to
I
him.
should, because
Yeah, he's
when you were
extraordinary.
talking about the learned helplessness, so funny. Me and my therapist have been working on this for 4 years. She works on internal family systems and somatic therapy and past life stuff. My like key thing has been in the past, that being helpless served me in some way, and then I kind
Yeah,
of learned that over. And then I'm a huge champion of our greatest weakness is our greatest power. So I feel like I have like ultra power to learn happiness because I had that. So I have to talk to him. And that's so
absolutely.
funny.
I look forward to listening to your conversation.
Yeah, I'll reach out to him. Okay, I have a question. So I was reading a lot of the stuff you sent me, and I'm fascinated by your work. I feel like there's so much parallels with us, even though I have a completely different life and background. I am one of those people who had these mind expanding experiences and somehow developed my own way to express them. So, yes, I want to get into a question, and then I'll get into that a little more later. So, you said in your work that you've observed that astronauts that have come back to Earth after being in orbit experience a change in their consciousness, their worldview, their belief systems, and relationship to selves, others, and what they want to do with their life changes. As a cognitive engineer, your focus was to help these people articulate their experiences after coming back from these space missions, helping them communicate their inner knowing and work on their intuition. So, what exactly did you find was their overall change in consciousness? And how did you help them communicate this? Well, let's start with that. What did you find was the broad over change in consciousness?
So just a caveat to make sure, because
Yes.
things get written. And so
Yeah.
I have worked with astronauts and cosmonauts. I have not
Yes.
worked particularly on their, if you wish, I didn't do any scientific work in their experience in that regard, but we have interviewed
Yeah.
people and
Yeah.
about, their journeys. And because there is an amazing work that is created by, just thinking he's I would say Mr. White, but he's Frank White. So he wrote a book in 1987 about an overview effect, and he beautifully encapsulated. Um, and these are actual interviews with astronauts. So that's a beautiful book, and that's way before
Mm,
I started working in the space domain. And
hmm
I definitely come across um, astronauts who would be willing, and cosmonauts who would be willing to share their wonder after they come back. I also had an opportunity to speak on a personal level with Al Warden. He's an Apollo astronaut who, um, shared a lot in public. I've watched him travel to UK. And also we had, personal exchange, which was very valuable, to hear his worldview. And
Yeah.
absolutely so, they, they talk about, like when you come to space, y- y- seeing the size or fragility, no borders, seeing the thin nim of our atmosphere, and
Yeah.
how sun comes up and comes down, as they
Mm,
orbit 16 times in a day. So they get 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets, so 90 minutes in orbit. And kind of understanding how small, a lot of them are actually pilots as well. So they would have
hmm
flown, and some of them are, test pilots as well. So they understand the distance and how fast we can travel, but seeing it from the perspective of a bird's, it's not even a bird's view, right? It's like the moon
Yeah.
view, the Earth.
Yeah.
It's like Carl Sagan, the profoundness of that view and him insisting that it had to be done. And he had a lot of pushback not to take that picture of the Earth looking from the edge of the solar system, because they said, you know,
Huh.
it's unnecessary. You wouldn't see anything. You know, who would need that? It will be, you know, so small, and it might destabilize the spacecraft. It might, you know, lose power, and it's important that the spacecraft preserves or stays on the mission. And yet he and it has had an impact on humanity. It has made a lot of people wonder. It inspired him to write texts that then inspired many others, and through film as well. So it's these little things that people experience, and then when we are communicating, you're almost hearing it behind words, and that
Yeah.
awe you hear from astronauts and cosmonauts and
Hmm.
taikonauts,
Yeah.
because they're trying to articulate, and you see how difficult it is. It's like seeing the person. I don't know if you've come across this, but there's a beautiful,
Yeah.
I don't know if I saw it. Oh, no, it was, I was listened to or read in a book about body
Huh.
language, where
Yes.
people, when they're in love, you can see them when they're talking to the person that they fell in love with, and when they're just in this extraordinary state of being enveloped, they on their tiptoes, and they often like go up on their tiptoes, and
Yeah.
they're almost trying to get off the ground, and their walk is different, and
Huh.
the way they talk, they're much more elevated. You know, their hands would go up, and it's almost like they're full of this. They're less attached to the earth or to they're less grounded. And astronauts have that when they're communicating, and they're almost scanning you as well to see how much they can tell you, how much they can share. And so what we do know for Apollo astronauts, they had other challenges. So that's something I have
Hmm.
studied through their diaries, and also asked then Al Warden, and um, just to find out if I am, you know, my assumptions are um, being appropriate. Because in the media, if you read about all Apollo astronauts, apart from one who became a priest, and the rest of them had very challenging social and personal life. Um,
Yeah.
and a lot of them were drinking, and had very challenging. I don't know if there were drugs involved, possibly, but
Yeah.
I didn't read that. But it was hard for them to deal. But I think
Hmm.
it was also with um, the pressure that was placed on them by society, in addition to what has happened to them. So there is one interesting piece or story when the Apollo 11 astronauts come back, and they are placed in isolation. And they are placed in isolation, I believe, on the ship, because it was on the ship, because they would land in water in a capsule, and the capsule would then, they would either be recovered from the capsule, or capsule would be pulled in. I think they recovered from the capsule. And
Hmm.
then the capsule is pulled in. So, mm, and they were put into a chamber, not to protect them, but to protect us, meaning all humans on Earth,
Whoa.
because there was a fear, because we didn't understand, or science had no experience, because
Yeah.
they could carry a moon disease.
Hmm.
And that because you don't know, like if you are a medic, that viruses, for example, they stay for a long time. And we do know from science that some might have traveled to Earth, at least us potentially. The one theory is that there's a bacteria, right, that populated and then life sprung. And that's what the science view, the perception is that they could carry a deadly disease. So can you imagine the family? How would they feel, then approaching them, because nobody knows.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And, and public. So they were actually, in a sense, were revered, as extraordinary human beings who've done that,
Yeah.
because nobody knew if they'll come back, and nobody knew how it will go. But also, not just going into the orbit is a challenge.
Yeah.
It's not going that far. So yes, so overview effect does have effect on people, and you can just tell even through social media. If somebody would do a study, they could tell that people suddenly change their pitch or like the outlook or how they speak. And
Mm-hmm.
if you watch, well, I do watch on Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
follow some of the
Mm-hmm.
astronauts and cosmonauts in space, and
Mm-hmm.
they put pictures more than words. And that I think,
Yes, I've noticed that.
yeah, and it's that wonder that they try to translate. But I know from my experience that when I want to photograph something that is extraordinary for me, I can't capture it. I can't seem
I
to
can't
get it into the phone.
I can't either. It's so funny you're saying this too, because so I've had a lot of these experiences and um let me see, how do I say this? So like I've had these my whole life, and when I was younger I struggled with drug and alcohol addiction, and I feel like I'm curious if you found this in your research or interviewing people. So because I feel like this is more of a knowing language or a feeling language, not a word language. My nervous system, I feel like my whole life has been in like fight or flight because I feel certain things that maybe other people are just more closed off to. And my body sometimes doesn't know how to conceptualize these things, visuals too. So in the past, I've kind of, tried to get into anything unhealthily that could regulate my nervous system, whether it was drugs or alcohol or a relationship, anything that I didn't have to be silent in my own head. Because anytime I'm in that silence, I have beautiful experiences, but sometimes they also filled me with fear because they were unknown. And I think they're all beautiful, by the way. I'm totally of the like neutrality aspect, that they're all filled with love and to evolve us, but sometimes our fear can color them negative. So I'm curious, yeah, just so you seen a lot of that in people that are having these experiences, that maybe it's just a way for them to cope, that they're and like how, and we'll get into, I feel like you know how to get out of it, but well, I kind of answered my own question there, but yeah, what do you think about that?
So are you, just to get the question maybe, so
Yeah, sorry.
yeah, that's okay because there is a lot to unpack. And
Yeah.
is the question, how do they?
You know what my now question is, and we can
Yes.
just jump right into it because it kind of is jumping into this. How do you help people integrate these experiences?
Uh,
Yeah.
yes. So these are very um, fascinating experiences on how people then what they do with their life, but also how they approach the rest of their path, the existing network. And so I was just listening to Dean Radin. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if you're familiar. Yeah, Dean Radin from
Hmm.
Noetic Science Institute. He's just has his book out, Science of Magic,
Yes.
and and he talked about how magicians, specifically, who are professionals whom you don't really know that they don't speak about that they're practicing magic. He said that part of what they do is that they don't disclose what they do, mm, because the other person has an effect as soon as they know. So it's like interfering pattern of our intention and thought. And this is what Dean Radin has done, or has publicized the research or the experimentation that he's done himself with his colleagues at IONS, but also he references others who repeated those experiments. And the two interesting modalities is that people affect um, mm, the reality. So we can affect the timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can affect it. Well, we can affect. There's a physical effect, and I'm not sure if you on your channel talked about the random number generator experiments that he's done. Have you?
Haven't, but I know, yes, I know what those are, where
Yeah.
a bunch of people got together and maybe thought about something, and the coherence made the random number generator become ordered. something like that?
Yeah, so the experiment
Yeah.
is there were several experiments, and they started with showing people it's something called like emotional arousal cards that will
Yes.
absolutely will spark some sort of response. And some of them are pleasant, some of them are, snake, somebody afraid, somebody not. So you had to generalize across population, but there could be a cute baby, there could be a cute puppy, there could be a war scene, it could be something very disturbing versus something very neutral, like let's say maybe a nature scene, and something very softening or very mm, gentle. And you can see the response in our body, in the galvanic skin response and heart rate, and also electrocardiogram and electroencephalogram. So they had run a number generator, and they've done varieties of this experience, but one of them is that they will produce a number at the time when they're cueing the person. So nobody knows, not the experiment set up the experiment, nobody else.
Yeah.
And then they will have to say, sorry, I'm describing another experiment actually. But anyway, so here the person knows at that
Yeah.
time they know,
Yes.
the body knows, or we do know our response is before we think that we haven't known,
Yes.
but our body a few seconds before, or part of a microsecond, I think it's within a. So our body differentiates in what part responds. So that's not what I meant to say. Sorry, but this is an
Oh,
extraordinary.
it's okay. No,
Yeah.
but
It,
that was
it,
That was
yeah,
interesting too.
so it's about presentiment. So that he calls it presentiment, meaning that we know what will happen. And of course,
Yes.
if we're attuned to that sense, then we learn or sort of learn to map that neurologically. Then potentially you could clue in. And people I've worked with in extreme environments, they strive or they rely on that, and they actually act on it. So they then, let's say, don't go into that situation or prevent somebody else going into that situation, and they save lives. And people know those people and they follow them because of their track record, literally. So the experiment that I meant to say in terms of us affecting the environment is so random number generator runs, and the person is sitting in front of the screen, and there is a line, and they have to say, when it's showing to them, it says go up, 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 but thinking one. Yeah. So because random generator is generating either zeros or ones. So if they want the random number generate a higher number, they go up, 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 meaning 1, 1, 1. So can you see that it's not a number, but it's actually raising somehow? And for everybody, meaning up means a different thing. You could be going up the stairs, looking up. There are many conceptual things, but it's almost rising. Yeah, it's something. It's an experience. It's not just a word. And then going down, 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 down. That's to generate zero. And after so many trials, they could actually see the effect. So the person definitely affects the random number generator with significant results. So much better than chance. But then they run, but then they run this experiment where they run the number generator the day before with the intention for the person to affect it the next day, let's say at the same time. And the results are the same. So they've recorded the data. They don't know what the data is, but then when they open it and match it, what the person was led to say, and then what the random generator produced. And so you can see that there is a experience, or there's an intention of several people, right? The person sitting who is in front of the screen, the people who've done the recording yesterday, although they're not generating the numbers, but they're all affecting space and field. So this is to say that we have an effect. And when we share, so coming back, and they've done the same about the future. So they run the experiment today, but they record the random number generators tomorrow at a set time. And that matches too. So the coming back to the integration of the experience. So he said, how do you help people integrate the experience? One of the aspects that I just came back from Soul conference in Italy. So it's
Yes.
founded by Stanford Professor Gary Nolan and Peter Scarfish, who is an anthropologist. And they have now a bigger team with AI expert and also business innovator, Amira. And so they have, so I talked about how if we share our experience before we integrate it, the content, including a person, has an effect on the value of that experience, how much of it we can share, and also how much we will remember it as it true as it was. So let's say I'm
Oh,
speaking with you right now, and I'm
yeah.
filtering, not like on purpose, but just so to be
Yeah.
polite, right? To be considerate in speaking in full sentences when I can, and being able to
I don't have that
articulate.
filter.
But meaning to see if I could do it, to build a concept up, for example,
Yeah.
all of these things that make sense. Uh, and so, and once I put on that filter, and also depending whom I'm speaking with, I will either say or not say things. And people will react to me even visually. You could see the person. Are they listening? Are they distracted? If I tell them, let's say, part of the story, what's their reaction? And that almost like there is an interference happens. There's an interference pattern on people's intention. So if we can affect with our thoughts and intention other people's, let's say, random number generator, which is a physical aspect, and then there is a potential that would be better to ask Dean Radin directly, because he
Yeah.
differentiates this clarity of where we affect each other. But the reason magician doesn't say it to others is because we all have an effect. So science
That is so
essentially
interesting.
is always biased, always.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Um, but
I
so,
love science though, but yeah.
yeah, but we did not know that, if it makes sense, until these experiments were run. We do know
Yeah.
the bias, and we do the double blind study, triple blind, and we make
Yeah.
sure that investigators don't know that, there is a clear distinction on who participates, who doesn't, that it is fair to everyone. And there are many aspects that eventually, somebody finds an ad, let's say on the web page or before on the billboard to participate in experience, and somebody doesn't. What are the chances? There's always a bias, especially where the human is involved, but there is no science where there is no human involved.
Let me ask you a question, because my therapist always tells me this too, because I have a lot of these experiences, and I want to run and write about them and talk about them on social media. And she goes, just give it a week. She was like, integrate it. And I never listen to her. But now you're making me want to. So basically, you're saying, and tell me if I'm wrong, don't share your paranormal experience until it's integrated, right? Because there might be something that gets lost. Is that kind of what the same sentiment?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
So there is an element. Well, but there are people who need to hear your experience at the time, that you are giving it. So, right. So that
yeah.
there is this
Yeah.
connection that that's the reason people come and listen to you, because it's helpful to
Yeah.
them. So
Yeah.
we cannot detangle that easily or untangle
Yeah.
that. Um, the I would say maybe why the reasoning is right is there is a lot of precious internal experience that gets
Yes.
articulated in a different way depending on whom you are saying it. And if we say it so many times because it was not threatening, it was accepted, it was safe, like all of those things, and that will invite us to do it again. But we will be sharing again only what is, in a sense, what we allowed ourselves to share. And also
Okay.
there's a lot of detail, as you probably know, trying to put this into words, and into a particular segment and either write it or say it, or through your art, through producing, there
Mm-hmm.
is something that is always unsaid, and you try to portray it in some way. Like your book has color. Every page has got a swirl,
Mm-hmm.
right? This plasma
Mm-hmm.
swirl in it, and I love it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank
But
you.
it communicates, something more beyond the words that are written on the page. And so if we say it too early, then we might lose something that in fact is so valuable potentially to all of us, to me to the person we are saying it, to the next person who will read it, and to the person they
Yeah.
will share it with. So, but maybe there is a flow like this that is appropriate right now. So it's a
Yeah.
dance.
I think it is too. I think when I share, the good boundary I have is that I don't look at people's comments. So I just share and I'm unfiltering sharing online, and I'm not scared or worried about what people think. And I also think what you're saying, I feel like when I talk about my experiences, that that stuff that can't be put into words because I'm speaking so authentically, I feel like it just transmits through to the person, and then they kind of get it in their own way. So I really do feel like what you're saying is true. And like when you speak the raw truth of your experience, I feel like it almost shepherds that other unspoken stuff to each person. Um,
Yeah,
so I think it's really,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it is the way, it is your way, and
yeah,
that's
yeah.
also the other unique part is that I try to, well, I have articulated in that talk to say
Yes,
that
I wrote it.
everyone is authentic, and your authenticity is not a data point in the bell curve. You don't need to be as others. In fact, the outliers always drive the change and innovation and adaptation. But this is not even that, is that the variety of experiences give us the depth of whatever that may mean. And you articulate it in your own way, someone else articulating it, perhaps being in the same place, in the same space, but having their own perspective and their own filters. And somebody would listen to them, but not me, for
Yes,
example, and so on. So
yeah.
um, it's also valuable. That's why it's precious to be as articulate, I guess, as you can.
Yeah, and that's why one of the reasons I wanted you on, because I think so many people have these experiences and they can't articulate it, or not even that they can't, they're scared to, or they don't feel like what they have has meaning or should be shared because maybe they're not trained to do this. And like, I just want to tell everyone, like, all of you guys, your perspective has meaning. It has special importance, and anyone listening can change the world with their unique perspective. It's just about expressing it. And I think everyone should go look at Iya's work. I heard she has an amazing YouTube video. I'm gonna link a whole presentation about the 5 rivers of integration and steps to learn how to communicate these things. And before we jump into a little bit of that, I wanted to ask one more question about these kind of experiences beyond words. I have an idea from my perspective of what I think we're obviously experiencing, right? I think it's these other dimensional beings, our future ancestors. I think it's all coded with plasma. But what do you feel like these people, everyone's experiencing that is other, maybe from us, and maybe also like us?
So is the question, what can we put, I guess, a similar descriptor to it, or put it all together?
Yeah, do you think there is a similar descriptor to it, like how I call this stuff plasma, or what is your experience with this ineffable thing?
Well, of course, it's my own evolving,
Mhm.
perception or understanding and belief. And, so it literally evolves day to day because
Same.
I'm open. Yeah, I'm open to hear how, you know, philosophy, things I come across in traditions. I'm very keen on speaking to people who live close to the ground and to nature and understand their perspective, as well as people who, for I would describe the realized beings. They often people in India are described that way, but I have met people like that who are not just from India, which is fascinating, and
Same.
they're living in current time. Yeah, and
Yeah.
so literally by speaking with these people and also having my own worldview evolving through my experiences, I feel we have um, we have an impact on what's happening around us and in the world at large. And I think there are many, and not many, but people working in consciousness and positive outlook for humanity do,
Mm-hmm.
and in fact, some forms of Buddhism, not only, but just as an example, they do feel that by praying they raise our experience on how we experience the world. And there are traditions in Australia and South America who talk about, and also North America, that talk about how acting in the world has an effect on the larger infrastructure. So I feel that we're all connected in some level. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have, I haven't, I mean, quantum physics people put it across as something that could connect it. But from my experience, if so many people are experiencing it and, able to articulate that to a degree, and also the experiment shows that we can affect the world around us.
Yeah.
I'm making that leap to see, to me, it feels like there is a connected tissue of
Yeah.
some sort. Yeah. So you describe it as
Mm-hmm.
plasma.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, another way, perhaps saying it is some definition of consciousness, because if you speak to different people about consciousness, it's different. People have a definition, especially as academic. We are very
Yes.
much. It's difficult to write a paper because you have to quote everybody who has already termed that word.
I
But
know.
it helps to communicate, the concept. So then we're talking about the same thing. So there's a plus, but there's
Yeah.
also um, so not everybody mean the same thing, which is part of the project.
Mm-hmm.
I also worked on linguistic misunderstanding on the native language. So that
Mm.
was English language between the British and the United States. Um, so that's interesting to see that concept could be very different, although we use the same word of what that means to
Yes.
us. So um, I hope I have not deviated too far from what.
Nope, you answered. You answered. Basically, yeah, I mean, I even say in my book, what I call plasma, you could call energy, the living fabric of reality, ether. A lot of people do refer to it as consciousness. I kind of say plasma is like the vehicle for consciousness. So I kind of talk about how there's like, consciousness all swimming through plasma, if that makes sense. And plasma is almost like the fascia of the universe. But I say that you could call it anything. I love that name and it's my hyperfixation. But yeah, you're saying the same thing, all different languages. We're connected. That's really, and we can shape reality. That's all that matters. And if someone can hear what you say or what I say or what Joe Dispenza says or Dean Radin, and that speaks to them. I think the main message is we can co-create reality. We might be doing it with these other beings or God or whatever you want to call it, and we can dream up more positive futures, which I think people don't think we can do.
Yeah.
Um,
So, I mean, we
yeah.
definitely affect the environment. So, there's one other experiment done in the Noetic Science
Hmm.
where they had blessed the tea and chocolate, and the chocolate
Hmm.
was it taste better,
Yeah.
and it was blinded, so people did not know
Oh.
which ones that they're going to get, and there was a definitely
Hmm.
significant effect. So, even in that, you have an
Wow.
effect. And it's physical. It's, well, at least it's not maybe physical, it's perceptual, right? So
Yeah.
something happened. Maybe it's not your taste buds, but maybe something that we can't capture yet
Yeah.
has made you feel or think that this is tastier,
Yeah. I
so,
think
which is
it has to
interesting.
do with the olfactory system. That's just my little hunch, but something with like that extra sensory perception or what you call preverbal knowing. There's like something in there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's extraordinary. And of course, there are famous experiments about 1% of the population meditating and having affecting
yes.
stopping the war activity or crime. So there are many instances now recorded, and people, create apps, groups,
Hmm.
websites to get people into tune. And there was I spoke with a psychologist who is also working in aviation in India, and she invited me to a group that meditates every hour. Yeah,
Wow.
because they have people from India, because of its particular belief system, they would have it around the world. So, on the hour, every 15 minutes, somewhere in the world would meditate. So, almost like carry the message continuously.
Yeah.
And I believe the Insight Timer is another app that they also do
Yes.
that. Yes. So there are even ions participated in that research.
That's so interesting. I love all this stuff, and I hope everyone is getting a lot of knowledge from this. Okay. Okay, breath work. You're big on breath work. I don't know much about it. So I was fascinated to hear the work about rebirth breath work, and I think Leonard Orr. So please talk to me about what circular breath work is and how this helps us integrate these pre-verbal experiences we're speaking of.
Yes. I found breath when I actually found Dan Brule is the person that I
Mm-hmm.
am learning from. So he learned it from Leonard Orr, but really Dan Brule
Hmm.
then traveled the world literally and found
Yeah.
masters from the books that he's read. He just traced the masters and went
Whoa.
to the Middle East, no, not Middle East, Far East, into India, and also anything that he hears, and he's been practicing it for conscientiously. So for 53 years. And even earlier than that, he had an experience as a
God.
child connected with breath, and even made children in the playground practice breathing exercises and doing things. But if you think
My
about it,
gosh.
I don't know if you've had that in school. We had to do PE, right? Physical education. And no matter how fit or not fit you are, they'd make you run. I think we had 3 kilometers or something really long. It felt really
Yeah,
long.
we had that too. Yeah, I hated it.
And yeah, yeah, and we had to do it as as a pass. Like you had to finish it, and you have no preparation. We had kids that did do athletics. I did all sorts of sports, but it wasn't about running like a stamina. So I would do like acrobatics, I would do swimming. All it requires kind of different type of breath. I actually did free diving swimming. That was just came in with a big fin, where it's called speed diving at the time. And we used to make our own mono fin. we getting
Uh-huh.
plastic and cutting cutting fins so that they fit, and you get this dolphin puddle, if you wish, and you just
My
go like
gosh.
this. It's just extraordinary. I loved it. And just recently went with my son, and before with my daughter, to swim with wild or free dolphins in Red Sea. And it's just it is, other type of consciousness, right? And you feel that, and they invite you to be with them, and they swim away when they need to sleep and so on. So it's quite, and it's clear, you understand, you don't need to have a any
Yeah.
marine animal behaviorist to want to appreciate that, and they literally invite you to
Yeah.
play. So, so I was running this 3 kilometers, and not once, every semester that would be
Ugh.
outside, apart from winter when we do skiing, a long ski run, which was my favorite actually. So that was when I discovered the feeling of flow. Uh,
Oh, well.
and so we would run, and then there's a point where you think, I can't do it anymore. Like kids would collapse, literally, they'll just fall. But I was usually never first. I would be, I don't know, third, fourth, fifth, thereabouts. And so you run, and you can see the line, you can see the finish line, but you think,
Yeah.
just no way. Like, I have no breath. I feel like I'm gonna choke, and
Yeah.
suddenly you get the second wind, literally. And now I understand the physiology of it, of what happens, because what happened is that you run and you have this you are oversaturated with O2, with CO2, because we know that muscles are taking oxygen, and they create acid, but what happens? uh,
Sorry, hold on. Danica, come here. Quiet, come.
it's okay.
Okay,
What is her
sorry.
name?
Danica, she's a little
Danica.
corgi. Just yelling at the door for some reason. Danica, come here. Come on.
That's
Okay.
okay. So
So O2, yes.
yeah, so CO2, and because
Mm-hmm.
we overbreathe, and that's part of the circular breath work, you don't take a pause between your inhale and
Mm-hmm.
exhale. So in a
Mm-hmm.
sense, when you're doing it, it feels quite intense. And because you don't know when it's finished, it feels, we go through a lot of mental work where we have to chat to ourselves.
Yeah.
Why am I here? Why am I doing it? My mouth is dry. And then these are the points actually that we can work with an analogy to what happens in our life. When we have to push, but we know why we push. When we find it tough, but we know why we're doing it. When we know that we can find the rhythm and find the pleasure in the hard work, find what we would enjoy, and find the way to enjoy it. So we could be running, and we could be, literally almost ripping our throat because we're trying to
Yeah.
inhale. But also, we can actually make this soothing. And so eventually, when I would do a mountain biking, but not like extreme, it's just I would have some hills that need to get through to and from work. It's like an hour's ride. And you would
Wow.
get on these hills and you would be like, I have no air. I can't go up.
Yeah.
And then you think, okay, let's work with this. You switch the gear, right? You go into small gear, and then you just start. You pre-breathe before you get to the hill, and I'm sure there are a lot of techniques. So you saturate your body, and then just take it slow, and control the breath to such an extent where you can maintain the pace. You don't push it. You don't, stay behind, but you just say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to make it as pleasant, as saturated, and I'm visualizing how my body is saturated with oxygen and this acid that usually cramps you up and doesn't let you go on, dissipates, and you work with your physiology. So in breath work, there is this also time, and when people have done it a couple of times and understand the process, because body also cramps up, it becomes tight,
Yeah.
and people feel discomfort because they don't know what's happening, and working through that, because in our experiences, especially those that are not wanted, the experiences, we go through that place where we need to negotiate that, and it allows us the time, very short time, because we don't need to do this for the experiences that are imposed on us or we imposed at some point, but we
Mm.
can work with that and find the tools in that short space of time of how we can help ourselves in the most nurturing way to get to the next step or the next moment. And then we
Yeah.
learn to live and appreciate that we actually have control to a degree. This part of the spirituality is actually having no control and surrender, but
Yeah. Yeah.
having the choice in the moment of how we are at this particular time. I have a choice. I make that choice conscientiously, and I flow to the next step, and I let it happen. And I know that I can deal with every moment. So breath work has a lot of physical aspect to it, which allows our brain to grasp it, which is very hard to do, an emotional, psychological, or long term, something that sits with us with the feelings for a long time, that our thoughts
Yeah.
then grasp and we run away with our internal processes. But breathing also is so, I find could be, sometimes feels very harsh, but it's also very gentle. And the gentle aspect there is that when we have an inquiry, it's not driven by our mind or somebody else that we are asking for assistance. But after we went through the process and they say, we set the intention. So- That's okay.
Sorry. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
That's okay. So we set the intention and we go into the breathing, and there could be varieties of breathing. It's not just circular breath, but it's the one that has been used to induce altered states of consciousness, even for a short spell. And during that time, something that we thought was related to that situation, intention, our question, but something else would come up. And that's exactly the point of, like, for example, you might be aware in the alternative medicine or some people report this in DMT, people report this
Mm-hmm.
in mushrooms, that
Mm-hmm.
where you set an intention on one thing, but then completely, or what feels like so far removed, the answer comes through a different way. So not
Yes.
directly what the mind can connect logically, but then eventually you make the connection after a time that
Yes.
we had time to integrate. So the breath work allows you to have that tool that you can eventually use yourself. It's much easier to do it with a person who can guide you because we can let go. Because when we are doing it ourselves, although we can, just people report to have different experience. At least people I work with, they say, we have a recording of the session and it's just
Yeah.
not the same when we're doing it together. And it's because of how we relax into the space, how much we trust. And you remember we talked about we affect each other
Yeah.
to a degree with an intention. And there is the space that we set together. You are trusting the process. I am trusting the process. I have the intention to support you. And there's little movements that I can observe and see that you can't do in the recording. Because when you're breathing next time, you already breathe differently. And we work with that. We work with that development because it's a technique. It's a method that you grow into. It's like going to, you know, I don't know, learning new moves or going to the gym or going
Yeah.
for a run, uh, or learning to swim. Every time you progress or you do it differently, or maybe we haven't done it for a while and our body doesn't listen as we would normally, but we know where we're
Yeah.
heading. So every time it's a new journey, and that's what that is. So, and it's also helpful to think about it that we don't. It's to remove the expectation and to allow for things to
Yes.
rise, the ones not the answer that we potentially been thinking about or wanted, but something
Mm-hmm.
else would come up and it might be very straightforward and say, how did I not see it before?
Mm-hmm.
But it's allowing
Yeah.
that space. Literally, the breath builds the space. So we create that opportunity for expression, realization without imposing the trail of thought or making connections that the mind can make. But there's something, by allowing the space, something else rises to the surface.
Okay, that's beautiful and genius, and I hope everyone heard that. Big, because it almost does create like this. It's so important, and I know this myself, but I still get stuck doing it when you're looking for an answer, and that will lead into kind of Aurora parenting with this, not to look for an answer, but instead be curious, ask questions, make the space for those, and almost like it creates this space for mystery and for paradox and for, yeah, just something sometimes beyond words, and sometimes it is a simple word, but it definitely doesn't come from our own logic. And if you're attached, I find if you're holding on to the outcome, you're not open to catching these other things. So what you're saying is so useful. And with that said, you speak of in your Substack, which is called Spice of Life, I believe. You talk about Aurora parenting. And of course, I'm obsessed with plasma. So I have to ask you about this because in my book, I talk about how studying the dynamics of plasma and the patterns can help expand our consciousness and evolve us as humans. So what is Aurora Parenting?
So, yes, you're referring to one of the examples that I give,
Yeah.
which I think that's exactly what you do in the book, although I've only been through early pages where you show the examples of where they, why this connection can be made. And and also allow other people to then to trace along. So like you're giving the key to what your process is and people can
Yes.
follow. Yes. And so the idea in parenthood as a spiritual retreat is
Mm-hmm.
looking for examples of how to hear your inner knowing. It's often cued externally, but it allows to hear that presentiment, for example, to tune in and not discard it or not clear it away by the thought that this is just nonsense or surely,
Mm-hmm.
mm, it's obvious to others and it isn't. And so common sense is not common sense to everyone, especially from
Yeah.
different cultural background. So the idea that I'm allowing people to see is to, through analogy with nature, through our own body, is to show how the universe, plasma, God, consciousness
Mm-hmm.
cares
Mm-hmm.
about, or potentially it's us, right, who are caring about us, but we are just a speck landed here for a
Yeah.
period of time to how other people describe a near-death experiences to rejoin. So
Mm-hmm.
it allows to see how the qualities of love, I speak with them about them in the Substack, but also on the
Mm-hmm.
in the upcoming book, which I'm doing the final edit. Hopefully, it will come out
Oh,
month or two.
what is
And
it called? Can you tell what it's called or no?
so I haven't settled on the title, but it is based on Parenthood as a Spiritual Retreat, which is an online offering that I do. And it's a 12-week process that allows for us to connect and talk about themes, which is about qualities of love. And this is kind of a shorter version, more independent, that people can just take it away. And it's designed as a journey that rather than reading a book, you can apply it right away. And
It's
I
awesome.
provide this. One of the examples is Aurora, is how to
Mm-hmm.
see how that is interaction particles on where it is in our atmosphere and how it relates to parenting or how we could see. So it's just showing the clues of what might speak to you. So throughout the either online journey or through this, I guess, electronic or paperback version, people can find examples of how to hear yourself. So it's not a book on parenting, but it's a book on
Yeah.
hearing your voice, in a sense, defining your path as a parent, but still
Oh,
listening, right? We're still listening,
yeah.
but it's not to be confused by the conflicting advice. And there's so much of it that is very difficult. And it doesn't have to be parenting, it's in any area, but it's learning to
Yeah.
listen to that voice and why children behave in a certain way and how it could be helpful for us to awaken to an understanding what that means for us, not for another expert in childhood, but
Yeah.
listening to them, but also
Yeah.
listening to what that means for us. And then not be
Yeah.
confused by all the advice, but then feeling which one would be appropriate right now and trusting the process that you and the child know the way.
Yeah. It's like
So,
your own solar system you're
yeah.
creating, your family. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And I'll link that below for everyone who's listening who is a parent and who wants to learn more about your own inner knowing. Because what
Yes.
you're doing is you're putting the power back in people, which is another reason I wanted to interview you. So I think that's really cool. I have two more questions before our final question.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go for it.
Okay. So there's an awesome quote you share in your presentation. It says, "Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it," by Rumi, the Sufi mystic, in 1200 or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm curious. It To me, I get from that, like, it's more about letting go and remembering who we already are. How do you interpret this quote when it comes to your work? Why does that quote speak so much to you?
I find that these barriers are filters, concepts, fears, our values, beliefs that we've adapted to think they are our own. But they may have been even our own before, but they're evolving. And our environment, and in this particular course, it's children or our relations, but I give an example in children, but it could be somebody in our workspace, somebody we interact with, could be a friend, could be, I don't know, another driver, in the busy
Yeah.
traffic. It could be someone that is just alerting us um, to pay attention. Do I have to get to that destination in 5 minutes? You know, why am I so pressed not to be late, for example? And why do I have to dress like that? Or why? These are just, very mundane questions, but it
Yeah.
often could say, why do I have to do the work this way? And they could have very deeply seated trust upon us structures versus how we feel this work can be done. And, it could be very deep spiritual. It could be very practical, such as, how we, I don't know, file documents at home. I don't know, something
Yeah,
very
or, like, how much we work a week. Like, for me,
yeah.
just to interject, it's always like, why do I think I have to struggle for money or book sales? Like, for instance, my book sales were going great for the last 2 months, and the last 5 days I started worrying about it, I had less book sales, and I was like, "How do I get out of this?"
Yes, I
But it's
know.
like we're
So
used to worrying. Yeah.
yeah. And, we definitely have, what can we, by, that thought process that has already happened and it taken us to the past, because the thought process took away from us observing the moment. So instead of doing
Mm,
something about it in that particular moment, we fell away into our thoughts that taken away into our worry or fear or concern or other people's values of how much and when we should, sell, buy. And yet at that time, we missed an entire life happening. So it's it's having that ability to be very observant and allowing the mind assist us rather than run away behind it or run away with it. The mind is a very powerful tool, purposely placed here with it. And
yeah.
it's about allowing, finding our own ways to work with it, because we know there are so many practices and they seem to be so simple and work for some and not others. And that's why I'm more now leaning into this nonverbal experience where people can, let's say, through breath work, through, um, you know, the walking meditations, which also could connect with breath, and free diving. If you've ever tried to dive on your holding your own breath,
I haven't. Yeah.
well, you don't have to dive. You can even just hold your breath and
Mm.
do these breathing exercises. But it's just another way of looking at, going on a bike ride, going for a run. All of that changes how our body works and what our mind is flooded with. So the reason as a clinical psychologist, when I worked and when I was trained, Dr. Hamden, my supervisor, would first thing when people would come in, they would say, "Okay, how well do you sleep? Do you exercise? Okay, let's agree that you do something for yourself. That could be an exercise. It could be a
Mm.
progressive muscle relaxation at the time was popular, or which
Mhm.
actually connected again with breath and tension.
Yeah.
So, and in the breath, we do this all the time, so we can multiply that. So these are the things that allow us to spearhead, I guess, into by so there's this concept, like if we don't think through all of our steps, we would not be prepared. For example, that's a very strong concept, right? It's drilled into us
Hmm.
in school, like you need to plan your work. And yes, we do, but equally, because we live inside the world, we live by, a week or a month, and we live
Hmm.
in the system. We cannot just let go, completely, if we wanted to stay in the society, which is
Yeah.
also a choice. Um, but allowing in the moment when you hear the worry in the mind, acknowledge it and say, yes, that's your work. And my work is to stay in the moment. I've got it.
Mm,
The next step, because if I mull over that I am late and sitting in the traffic, will it get me there faster? No. you know, will it get me very, high in emotions because other people are cutting off, or I don't know, somebody blocked the road and I can't, move. But instead, the life has passed by. So what can I do in that moment that will actually foster me ahead? So, I mean, other people who are very efficient, plan on what they're going to do once they get there.
yeah.
Um, but some people, learn a language, sit and learn the app with a language, or I don't know, keep listening to
Yeah.
the book you were listening. Just be grateful for the time that you were given. Maybe, if you were a split second earlier, that could have been, our family in that conundrum that, the reason the traffic is stopped, for example. So these are all we yet, I don't believe, can encapsulate the intricacies of how it all connected. And yet something then works out and people tell you the phrase that you knew as a child, which is also back in
Yeah.
contact, that her
Wow.
father said, and then the priest repeats it to her.
What was it?
So they were sitting under the stars,
Yeah.
and what did they say? They said,
I know one of them is when she's on the radio as a child, he tells her, she was like, "Oh, what do I do?" And he's like, "Don't worry, be yourself." And that
yeah,
always stuck out to me. Like when I'm
yes,
communicating with like other
yes,
beings, I'm
yeah.
just myself. But
Maybe
there's
we'll need.
another one.
There's
Yeah.
a one where when they go out under the stars with the priest, and he tells her the phrase that her father told her, and that really disarmed her. I'm trying to think what that phrase was, but it was very, very close to her. And again, you see
Let me look
Carl
it up.
Sagan beautifully woven that into the book, on
Yeah.
purpose. These touch points, just like Arrival, it's full of the circular reference that talks
Huh.
about you don't know where the coincidence began or started, what is the timeline that we are working with. So
Yep.
it's kind of neatly
I'm trying to
brought us
find the
back.
quote.
Okay, okay, that's fine. Yeah, that would
Yeah.
be good.
Small moves.
Yes, that's
Is
it.
that
Yeah,
it?
small moves. Yeah,
Small moves. That's so true because
Ali.
I'm like I've been the worst at that my whole life, but it is true. It's like brick by brick,
Yeah,
small moves. But I'm
yes.
just like, no.
Well, it's actually
Yeah.
being in the moment, taking the moment as it
Yeah.
comes. So we could put it into small moves. We could put it in terms of being present and available for whatever comes next. It's not just about mindfulness. It's very hard to encapsulate that.
It
Um,
is.
like it's another way of saying it is be engaged in life as it happens.
That's kind of like my whole I'm like taking notes as we're talking. My whole thing I'm getting from it is like small moves is like trust the timing. Like, for instance, I'll just say this as an example to the audience because it's a real thing I've been dealing with, like fears with money popping up that I don't have now, that I shouldn't have now. But it's almost like I'm so comforted by that because my whole life I was struggling until a few months ago. So, like what you're telling me, what I'm learning right now is like one, acknowledge the mind's worry instead of suppress it, which is what I've been doing. And then 2, remind myself that my work is to stay in the moment, thank my mind, but things are different now. I'm not struggling as much as I want to go back to that comfort because the unknown is very scary. And then 3, what can I do in the moment to foster a choice that will foster me ahead instead? So I love that. And then 4 is like the gratitude, like just go back to my play, my mission in life, trusting life, dare to live my dream life rather than choosing to go back to my old reality. Cause I think so many of us do that. And then we're like victims to life, but it really is in our control. Yeah.
Yeah, it often could feel not like that, because we
Yeah.
are bound by location, by relationships, by society, by, politics, like you name it. But choosing, you know, even to the basic is that, I could still have a very pleasant breath, like I
Mm,
have that choice of, enjoying something in the moment and making, in other ways, making the best of what we have at the time. And by doing that and having that intention, I hope and believe through that can be evident now through some experiments that we're actually affecting the field as a whole, um, around
yeah.
for humanity and more locally as well. So I think
So cool.
the more positive we can be in the moment, I think we will shape the reality in that way too. So the more of us
I
think that
agree.
way, in whatever is appropriate for us. So this is coming back to what I communicate about parenthood and children. Children are just one modality of how we are reminded. But we don't have to have children to to have the inner knowing.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's about meeting the moment and then saying, well, what does that mean? But not running away with thoughts, but
Mm,
making the best choice in the moment, and allowing the mind to help us what it's really good at, but not taking us on a journey that we have chosen, perhaps a different one for that particular moment.
I love that. Allow the mind, kind of like AI, allow it to support us, but don't let it override our own system of
Yes.
intuition.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty
Okay.
powerful. Mm.
It is. No, I just took so much notes on it because that actually helped me with what I was dealing with. So thank you for that. That's a great way to close. I'm going to ask you a final question. Um, okay, I ask everyone this at the end. I kind of copied Lewis House because he always asks people the same questions at the end. Okay, what is something that comes up for you to say just through channeled or your own knowing, whatever comes up in your mind when you think of something you can share with our listeners today that feels like candy for your soul?
Indeed. Well, I encourage you to find the most pleasant sigh. So it's when we do something like, and just do this, even 4 times and see how it spreads across the body. See how that feels inside. See how it feels in your throat. Just listen to that whisper that you create. Listen to that sound that you make, which is actually quite pleasant to listen. And it almost invites us to relax. And once we do this 4, or even I would invite you to do this 8 times, and these numbers have significance in Korean medicine, and you can see how that, just watch what happens to you. Just note the change and whether you want to do it again. But it's something that
It
we do
made
naturally. We do this naturally when somebody, for example, came to us and they have a concern, and they are, uh, you know, they're talking to us and then we are talking to them, or maybe there is a point in their conversation when they finally reach the place and they sigh. They do either a tiny
yeah.
sigh or a big one. It's sort of like they say sigh of relief, but it also could be a sigh of joy. So
Yeah.
practice both and see how you feel. Do today a practice of relief and tomorrow of joy, and see how you sound. Just actually listen. to how you actually sound. Make a recording. Listen how that how that sounds. And in fact, if you put that on later on for you somewhere on the phone as a reminder to sigh, that would be a beautiful exercise to do throughout the day or whenever you need a little bit of a space.
I love that. Oh my God. I just wrote that in my notes too. That is like the perfect, I think that's the best answer I've had yet, the candy for your soul. Cause that literally felt like candy for my soul. It's like something sweet you can't put in words. That's
Yes.
why yeah. Oh, so amazing. Okay. Before we go, tell everyone, and I'll link this below too, but whatever comes to you, where people can find your books, your course, your Substack, your Instagram, anything you want to share.
Oh, that's very kind. So,
Hmm.
good way to connect is Instagram. I think it's Dr. Iya Whiteley, so just as it's spelled. Or you can just go into Substack and also look up my name. Or there is a link tree agreeing with us. So, it's Linktree on Dr. Iya Whiteley as well. And YouTube also under the same name. So in essence, if you come to YouTube, it's got, or not YouTube, well, YouTube's also have that. But if you go to Instagram, it's very clear. You can navigate all the links right from there if it's the easiest, or just Google it.
Okay, perfect. And what is your Substack again? Is that on your link tree?
Yes, it is also on the link tree. It's a Substack, Dr. Iya Whiteley. So if you put it in, it will come up.
Perfect. And then I'm also going to link your spiritual parenting online course, as well as a video on circular breathing, and a few other things that people can check out. And all right. Well, thank you so much, Iya. Just hang around for 1 minute when we get off. Everyone, please follow Heart Snacks Candy for Your Soul on the podcast. That helps us very much. And on Instagram, follow Iya and all of her awesome things. Share this podcast with your friends. Check out more info below in the description. Thank you guys. I love you guys. Keep going, and you are magic. Goodbye.